The fourth book on the list is called The True Cost of Low Prices. It's a book I read for my Justice Seminar class, which was my theology class senior year that was based on social justice. One thing about my Justice Seminar class that really bothered me was that I felt like everyone was getting really depressed and hopeless a lot of the time. Like, we would talk about all these problems and we would see the statistics about poverty in the world and we would just think, this sucks. This really sucks. And then we wouldn't go anywhere from there. And I really enjoyed reading The True Cost of Low Prices because it was a lot more hopeful than anything else we had read or seen or talked about in the entire year. That's not to say that it's not going to upset you. It is going to upset you to read about all these horrible things that happen, but its main message is that we need to tell people about this and talk about it, because if everyone knew about this, then the world would not be like this, which is something I would like to believe in, because I generally think people are good and that the world is a good place. So I really enjoyed the message that we just need to tell everyone about it, and if we tell everyone about it, enough people are going to get motivated to want to change the world. I really enjoyed that message. It was a lot less dense than some of the other things we had read, and it was a lot less depressing than a lot of the other things we had read. If you're into social justice, this is a good choice. It's not very long either, so you can read it very quickly. Book number 5 is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Now, I had known about this book for a very long time, just because it's a very good book that people know about, but I did not read it until this year. I remember it was always kind of vaguely in the back of my mind as like books I should read in the future sometime, but there were always books that were more important at the time. And then finally one day I was at my cousin's house and I saw it sitting there and I was like, hey, can I borrow this? And so I did. And then even then, it took me a few months before I actually read it. I'm so glad I did. If you've ever hesitated to read this book for any reason, because you think it's super depressing, or if you just don't want to read about the Holocaust, if you don't want to read a young adult book, if you think it's weird that it's narrated by death, if you think it's really long, any reason at all that you don't want to read this book, forget about all of those things and read this book right now. It can be a depressing book. It is about the Holocaust and you can't avoid that, but it is such a beautiful book, and the way that Zusak writes is so beautiful and masterful that you forget any sort of stigmas you had about this kind of literature before. And if you don't want to read a young adult book because you're not a young adult or a teenager or a kid or whatever you think this is aimed for, please read it anyway. I honestly cannot tell you why it is marketed as a young adult book, besides the fact that the main character is like 14. My mom read this book and she was like really confused when I told her after the fact that it was a young adult book. She just didn't understand it. I sometimes never understand why things are marketed one way or the other, but that has nothing to do with this book. It's just a book. A really good book. And I know all I've said in this review is that it's good, but I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just going to say that yes, it's about a little girl in the Holocaust, and maybe that's depressing, but it is also beautiful, and it's just about life, and you can relate to it really well, even though it's about things that we've obviously never experienced ourselves. Please read this book. That's it for now. I'm very excited to remember what I've read this year, and hopefully that will propel me into next year to see what I can read then. And if anyone ever has any book suggestions, please tell me about them. I'm always excited to hear about more books that I should read. See you later!